Desiree-Anne Martin, good morning from San Diego to a very cold Cape Town, I believe. Thank you so much for being with us this morning. It's a delight to have you looking so cheerful on the other end of a Zoom call.
Thank you so much for having me, Bronwyn. I feel delighted because it's a public holiday here in Cape Town in South
I know.
Africa.
Thank you for making time out of Youth Day. I hope you've celebrated it appropriately.
Yes, I have made my children do housework.
That's the spirit. Not quite sure how politically correct that is, but go for it. Okay. So, Desiree, tell us a little bit about your story, about where you've come from, where you are right now, and then we'll get into our Spanish Inquisition after that.
So I was born in Cape Town in 1976 in South Africa. And so I have the privilege of and pain of experiencing both sides of growing up in the apartheid regime and then being a democratic baby in my adolescence. So that makes for an interesting part of my story. Growing up as a person of color in South Africa and all that that came with, and not only implicit racism, but also intercultural racism because of the ability to identify and reclassify yourself as white, and there were fairer skin colors, and there's an entire tale behind color. And then also growing up and going to a private school where I was exposed. I say exposed as though it's a flasher in the trees, but it was a culture shock to be in an environment that was very privileged, and comparatively the other girls were prettier than me, smarter than me, whiter than me, richer than me. And it caused a huge identity crisis that spun me out in insecurities that I didn't even know I had. And that started my desire, my strong desire to belong, to fit in at no matter what the cost was. And I think that's when I was politely invited to leave that school in grade 11. At other schools, they call that expulsion, but not at private schools. It's an invitation you can't refuse. Um,
Exactly.
I went for my final year of school, I went to a co-ed school, and there were boys there. And I had already developed body dysmorphia, and I was then, as I still am now, 5 foot nothing, hoping for a miracle. And that's when I started out with my primary addiction, which was slimming tablets, um, because I wanted to effectively, the bottom line is be loved. And what that translated to in my 17-year-old mind was to be desirable, to be wanted, to be attractive, to be skinny. And that progressed rapidly. And within the space of 3 months, I was taking up to 10 slimming tablets a day.
Wow.
Um, and it worked. I lost tons of weight, but it also started a war in my mind around control, and controlling how other people perceived me. And so what I was presenting on the outside was very different to what I was experiencing within myself. I thought I was not good enough. I thought I was, just to sum it up, I was not enough in any way, fraught with really deep-seated insecurities. And I grew up in a dysfunctional home where there was domestic violence, there was addictions of all sorts, codependency, and To the outside world, it did not seem like we were rotting on the inside, because as the title of my memoir speaks to, we don't talk about it ever. And what we don't talk about is anything. And we never spoke about anything that happened inside the house, certainly not to each other, and certainly not to anyone outside. We just presented as this perfect family. And I became adept at keeping secrets, and I became adept at telling lies. And that was the foundation of my identity, was to never let anyone know what was truly going on, whether that be a huge cataclysmic violent event in my house, or something that was happening to me, and I am a survivor of childhood sexual abuse as well. But I think I could go into a war story about how there was the progression, but my addictions and afflictions, they did progress. They led me to toxic relationships, abusive relationships, a multitude of addictions. If I could abuse the hell out of anything, I would. And that included people and substances and alcohol, which was ironic because growing up in an addicted household, I vowed I would never drink. But as soon as that wine hit my cells at 17, it just made perfect sense and felt like coming home. And I found the elixir, and I found the escapism that I needed. So my story of addiction led me to, in my 20s, through a very dysfunctional and toxic relationship, becoming an intravenous heroin addict. And I was by and large a criminal. I would steal, I would I was gonna soften the blow and say borrow. But I would steal, I would defraud, I would pawn things. I stole my grandmother's china, and I stole I committed credit card fraud. And by the time I was in my fourth year of heroin addiction, I was exhausted. As I was physiologically addicted, I was a walking zombie. I was so tired, like my bones, my soul, what was left of my soul, because of how much I'd shamed myself for my addiction. I was so tired. And at the end of the day, all I had left to bargain with was my body. And I became a sex worker to support my addiction. That started a vicious cycle of shame, whereby I would ply my trade, as they say, and then I would feel so deeply ashamed that I would need to use again, and so on and so forth. The cycle continued. And they say that secrets keep you sick. And by the end of my active addiction, I was dying on so many levels. Even physically, I'd been given 6 months to live because my organs were failing. And I was the walking dead. My entry into recovery was not voluntary at all. I didn't embrace it. I did not want it, because it would take this great anesthetic that I had found away. but I was given the opportunity to go to a rehab. That would be my second rehab stint. And this place was different in that it was there that I discovered the power of speaking my truth.
Mm-hmm.
And in response, there was no judgment. In fact, I was saying the most shameful things, or the things that I felt the most ashamed about, and people were saying, yeah, I did that too, I relate. And I was like, what? Like, where have you people been? Because addiction exists in isolation. It's
Mm-hmm.
makes you feel that you're the only person that is going through this. And it also strips you of any hope, let alone self-respect and dignity. There was an incident which I refer to as my last convincer, which was quite horrific. And after that, I remember holding what is a quarter of heroin in my hand and saying to myself, like, if you continue to use, you're going to die. And it's not going to be one of those sudden deaths, because addiction is not going to be that kind to you. You're going to suffer. You're going to go through 100 forms of hell, and it's going to be slow and painful. So that was option one. And option two was to get sober, and to find recovery, which I did on the 1st of August 2004, which is over 17 years ago.
Wow. Okay. I mean, you and I have known each other for a good couple of years. I think that's the first time you've shared your story with me personally. I in a previous life, I have had some addicts in my life, and I know how jealous a mistress addiction is, and how, as a person who loves an addict, how that feels. I can only imagine that those who loved you must have been beside themselves as well. Did they ever give up on you? Were they constantly there? How did your family deal with that?
I did a very good job of actively pushing away everybody that loved me through my behavior, which was unacceptable, intolerable, but completely out of my control. Yes, I alienated myself from absolutely everyone. The person that stuck to me like new Velcro was my mom. And my addiction, and I've seen this subsequently in the work that I do, is that people who are trying to support or love or help the addicted population, they get sick too. And I made my mother incredibly sick, incredibly anxious, incredibly worried. I think that every single day, she thought that I would die. And on some days, she could have been right, you know. And I don't think people gave up on me, but I was given a choice because they kept trying to tell me the truth, and I refused to hear the truth, because if I knew the truth, I'd need to change what I was doing, and I was not ready to do that. So I just pushed love away, which is ironic because that is what I had been craving my entire life.
Exactly.
But it was my mother who could ill afford it at the time, who had sent me to the rehabilitation, the treatment center, that changed everything.
Thank goodness for mums. Hey? So let's talk a little bit about your life subsequent to that. I mean, that's the story up to that is I guess part of what you're sharing on stage is, right? It's about how how terrible things were and how you got through that and how you got to that, as you said, your last convincer, which I think is a hell of a statement in and of itself. So you get into rehab. I mean, again, I have very limited experience of what that's like, having been on the outside, watching somebody go through that a couple of times. I can only give you all the credit on earth to have got through that. Really, I've seen the struggle, and not everybody makes it. So you know, let's talk about after that. What happens to Desiree-Anne? You get sober 17 years ago. I mean, how many hundreds of days is that? How many, that you must, do you still keep count of how many days it is?
I'm good with words, but I suck at math. So I don't know how many days. It's a lot, but it's a lot just consecutively one day at a time.
Exactly. Exactly.
I'm not going to paint a rosy picture of recovery because it is damn difficult. It is taking something away that has been everything to a person, and speaking personally, taking everything that I knew, the only thing that I believed was working for me, but destroying me at the same time. And that's a massive loss. And it's a big ask. And there were days in especially in the first year of recovery where it was literally like 5 minutes at a time, just stay clean, just don't pick up, just don't phone the dealer, just don't ruin everything. And it was incredibly hard. But the people that I had found in the 12-step fellowships, I mean, when I went to my first meeting and I saw people were claiming that they were over a year clean, I thought they were lying. And I was like, what? Like, that's ridiculous. And anyone above that was definitely a psychopath, you know. But that is the community that believed that I could do this, and believed that I could stay sober, and showed me how. It's really strange that when I came into recovery, it's almost as though I had this amnestic experience where I didn't know how to live anymore or make decisions. It was crazy. I had an amazing sponsor, but I would phone her up and I'd be like Coke Zero or Coke Light, you know, because I wasn't quite sure if I was making the right decision. And she was very patient with me until she was like, you know, just get a milkshake. And I was like, I'm happy with that decision. But it is recovery is learning how to live again, but it is not just about sobriety. You know, like the using of substances or alcohol or process addictions, eating disorders, gambling, sex, relationships, those are the symptoms of something else. You know, that's what everybody sees. And so the process is, yes, it was abstinence, but I had to change. I had to change my thinking, my belief systems, the way, my relationship with myself. And then that informed my relationship with everyone else and everything else. So, and just because I got sober doesn't mean I wasn't still crazy. I was crazy before and using a lot of drugs, but I was now sober and crazy. And so, which is a passion of mine, in the work that I do, is about mental health issues and trauma and how they are related to addiction. and that those have to be addressed all simultaneously. Because I still, even though I was sober, and this is 2 years into my sobriety, I made some bad life choices. I'm talking about marriage here. So even though I was sober, I was still, because I hadn't done the work, I was still making the same decisions. I was still caught in the same patterns. I was still being attracted to the same type of toxic relationship. And so recovery has given me my life back and so much more, but there are huge struggles that within recovery that people don't talk about, and I'm quite open about it. And I'm not confining this to the 12-step process, because I believe that there are other ways of obtaining and sustaining sobriety. But it's just too that it hurt just as much when I was sober, if not more, because I had nothing to take the pain away.
I was
So
going to ask you about that. So you spoke about this huge loss of this anesthetic that you'd had, and obviously you were facing this daunting idea that somebody had been sober for a year. So people grieve loss, right? So I assume that you grieved for the loss of this thing that had been such a winning formula for you, and I use winning formula. What was there one thought that kept you going? That thought, well, okay, it's a conscious choice every day to continue with this grief. You know, those of us who grieve the loss of a loved one have no choice in that. It's a thing. They died. You carry on living. You put one step in front of the other. Your choice was a daily one to continue to grieve. What was there one thought that kept you going? That was there one thing that was like, okay, that one thing is worth this daily choice to grieve and get through this?
So in the beginning, I had to get really hard ass and militant on myself. And the formula was, Desiree-Anne Martin, if you used, you will die. Like, you will drop down dead on the floor. And that worked for a year.
Wow.
It
Okay.
really helped me for my first year. I had to believe that, because I could not entertain um, using on the weekend, or social using, or recreational using, or drinking, or I needed to believe that. And then as I started amassing new things in my life, like a job and relationships, and the healthy ones, and and friendships, and as the years progressed, my relationships with my family started healing, and then it became more about, am I willing to lose all of this for that? Am I willing to take that gamble? And as I am now, which is 17 and a half years sober, I have been blessed with, created, I don't know what the accurate word is, but my life is so full of meaning and value and purpose, that is not worth a mojito.
Gotcha. Need we say more? Okay, so let's talk about your life at the moment. So you went back to school. Clearly, you got your degree. You're now this therapist who's helping other people deal with their addictions. Tell us a little bit about your life now.
So the degree, I didn't actually go back to school, because I went to university for the first time when I was 40. I'd been accepted when I matriculated to University of Cape Town, but I actually turned down my place
Wow.
because of fear of failure and of my insecurities. I turned down my place, and also, if we're being honest here, I like the freedom of being able to just drink and use. And so without the responsibilities, and so I have been counseling for over 14 years, but I had the opportunity. I gained admission to UCT in 2018 without an undergraduate degree,
Wow.
on recognition of prior learning alone. And in 2 years, I obtained my postgraduate oh, I've forgotten, postgraduate certification, qualification, that's the word. In 2000, in 2019, I obtained my postgraduate qualification from the University of Cape Town. And before that, I thought, oh, the piece of paper is not important, But it was COVID, it was lockdown, there was no graduation ceremony, and there's just a picture of me standing on a completely deserted jammy steps, holding that piece of paper and grinning like an idiot. Because I had managed to do that with a toddler and a tween and a full-time practice. And that's where I am now. I'm in private practice. I work as a counselor, and I work in the areas of addiction and mental health, and trauma. And I work with adolescents and adults. And I'm also a dialectical behavioral therapy facilitator, which is a fancy way of saying I teach people how to calm the bleep down.
Wow. Okay. I have a couple of clients for you. I need to recommend.
Send them. And while I was so it was a big year, 2018, because
Congratulations.
I'm
That's a hell of
studying
a
in
year.
PT. I got a child who's still using a dummy and another one who's growing boobs, and I have my practice, and I wrote a book. I wrote my memoir. It had been a long build-up, but I wrote it in the bulk of it in 3 months because I felt compelled to tell my story. I felt compelled to speak my truth. And I felt that in doing so, in some way, I would break the cycle for my daughters and not pass on a legacy that I had no right to pass on to them without their permission. And I did that, and that was amazing. And I have my writing career is, I like, I don't even, I want to call it a side hustle, but it's actually my superpower. Writing. I have a day job and then I have a superpower, and it's writing. But it's so I've been published 8 times subsequently in anthologies or corporate annuals or short story collections, as well as opinion pieces, guest blogging. So I have a fiery relationship with the English language, and so I have quite a successful writing career as well.
Well, that's
And
amazing. And
thank
quite
you.
a successful speaking career too, just by the way, while we're at it. Okay. I mean, obviously COVID was not great news for those of us in the speaking industry, she
Let us
says.
not speak of the war.
Yes. Okay. So how I mean, obviously you had your writing, you were still doing, I presume, virtual talks and things like that. And I know that very slowly in South Africa we're seeing green shoots of in-person events happening again, which is wildly exciting for us, obviously. So tell us a little bit about, so obviously your talk is based on your story, and it's, would you term it as a motivational or an inspirational talk? How would you describe it?
I'm not entirely sure if what is the difference? I should
So,
know this, right?
so for me, a motivational talk is like somebody who's kind of rah rah. You can do this, the power of positive thinking, all of that. And an inspirational speaker is somebody who possibly talks about it from a lived experience, who isn't going to, be the rah rah thing. It's more of you're inspiring people more than motivating them. I think that it might be semantics, but I think there is an energetic difference in the delivery, at least.
I understand that, and I think the talks that I have given, or that I give, have evolved since I first started public speaking. So I would have straight up classified myself as an inspirational speaker in 2018. And to a great extent, I still am an inspirational speaker, but what I've learned is that inspiration, and if my truth and telling my story resonates with just one person, then yay. But inspiration has a very short shelf life. And so my talks have also become more informative and educational, especially my talks to universities and my talks to high schools. I found in that just speaking my truth was enough, but I didn't just want to inspire people and leave them with this huge asset, which is hope. But I wanted to help people as well, and to say that, because I could tell my story and say, and ta-da, jazz hands, look how everything's turned out, that's fantastic. But I knew that in every audience that I addressed, albeit in person or virtually, that someone was struggling, and it wasn't enough just to say, ta-da, jazz hands, and my life is peachy, and nice to meet you. It became more solutions focused. So with corporates, I offered follow-up interventions for people who identified with the topics that I address in my talks, which is around adversity and around resilience, but the threads that run through it is around things such as addiction and trauma and mental health issues and GBV. And it was important for me to not just show up and tell my story and then leave people. I still make myself very accessible, and so it's expanded into doing workshops at schools around, with no disrespect to the Department of Education, but things that I feel are sorely lacking in the curriculum. Things such as boundaries, healthy relationships, toxic relationships, consent, and things such as self-defeating behaviors, which I found in adolescents especially are more about the system that they're in, and they're more about a reaction to something than they are about an actual addiction. And so talking about feelings, it is shocking how many of our young people cannot even identify fundamental feelings, let alone know how to deal with it. So
I can attest to that, having a 14-year-old myself. And I tend to think that I'm a fairly enlightened mom because of the amazing people that I get to work with and get to interact with, and the wealth of information and experience that I've been exposed to via all of you amazing people. So I've tried to always help and give perspectives based on what you guys share with me. Even now, even notwithstanding all of that, we still struggle to name our feelings, to like I don't know how to fix that. So I think if you're doing that at the school level, you are a saint among human beings. Really. Moms everywhere are going, please, Desiree-Anne, can I give you my number? This is the school. You know, I can see that happening everywhere because it's tough. I think even as it took me a long time. I mean, I was in therapy well after 40 before I could even name my feelings. So, you know, it's huge. It's huge.
Absolutely. And so there's the work that I do with adolescents, which is a huge passion of mine, but also with adults, and not just identifying feelings, but for people to acknowledge their pain and their reality. And you know, it's not, I'm not asking people to raise their hands and go, yes, I'm addicted to so and so and so, but if it resonates and offers hope, albeit somebody who has experienced trauma, or somebody who is experiencing mental health issues and vulnerabilities, which is widespread post-COVID. I mean, the statistics are just staggering, how many people are struggling with mental health vulnerabilities. But with the adults, also your feelings words, like, you know, teaching feelings words to adults. So like happy, sad, mad, you know, kind of like, and it's, but so it's about also destigmatizing asking for help. Part of the purpose of the talks that I give is to destigmatize these issues that I talk about. And because there's still so much shame and stigma around, and I always go back to this, that like in the Xhosa culture, there is no word for depression. So to show you that it's not even acknowledged. And so to not just offer hope, but to go beyond that, you know, and to say that yes, there's hope, but this is how it's done. And that is my inherent hope in the talks that I give, is that there is follow-up with schools and universities and corporates to say, okay, you said there was a way we can fix this. So
show us.
and so I've had corporates ask me to come do like vision boards and goal settings, and I'm like, yeah, but do the people that work for your company actually get along? Because how can they work towards goals together if they don't know how to speak to one another or meet each other's needs? So it's definitely been an evolution of, from, you know, the way that what I used to speak about a few years ago to what I'm speaking about now. But
okay, so if you so my job is to almost, forgive me, but pigeonhole you into, somebody will call us and go, we're having an event or a conference and our theme is this, and who would you recommend, right? So help me to help you get in front of the audiences that need to hear you most. What are the themes that we could say Desiree-Anne addresses? So when they call, we can say, right, these are the things that would be best suited. These are the audiences. These are the events. Who would those be?
So not discounting my story entirely. So addiction, recovery, mental health issues, GBV, trauma, adversity, resilience, purpose, hope.
Okay. Right.
I'm such a hope merchant, honestly.
Listen, we're all hope merchants in this industry. That's if there was no such thing as need for hope.
Just change, and this is true for me, and I've seen it in the people that I've been privileged to work with, is the possibility of change and finding your purpose through that change.
Cool. That's a really profound message. So now I'm looking at the time, and I know that you have to go and fetch your 14-year-old imminently.
I'm sure she won't mind if I was like 15 minutes late. So.
Okay. I don't want to keep you, because I know that 14-year-olds can get even more eye-rolly if mommy keeps them waiting. So.
She's fine.
Okay. So I'm just looking through our usual Meet the Speaker questions, and we've actually covered most of them already. There's a couple of random ones here, which just to bring a little bit of a smile. So, who's your celebrity crush?
My celebrity crush is currently.
Currently.
Why am I not crushing hard on someone right now? I clearly am not watching enough TV or something.
Right? Okay. Which was the next question. Is that what are you currently watching on TV? So obviously nothing.
No. I'm actually, what I'm currently watching on TV is Anatomy of a Scandal.
Okay. I believe it's really good. I need to. Actually, yes, I think it's on our list. I don't think we've got to it yet. Okay. So outside of work, what's your favorite thing to do? Outside of changing the world and helping moms of 14-year-olds everywhere. What's your favorite thing to do?
It's actually to spend time with my girls. But I do also enjoy art. And not like fine art. I'm talking like chubby crayons and like, but creative expression. Now that we can go to the theater, I can go to the theater because I do so love the drama, and I love hanging out with. I'd love to think of myself as a lady who lunches, but I work. But I love hanging out with my friends, and I love hanging out with my husband, and I love food. Food.
Food. Okay, so then that's another thing. Like, what do you cook? Do you hang out in the kitchen? If you do, no.
I'm very much a periphery of the kitchen kind of girl.
Okay, it's eating the food, not cooking the food. Okay, good to know.
I do love to cook, but I rebel against the expectation of needing to provide a meal for people every night.
Me too. That's why I married Duncan. No, that's why I married Duncan. Duncan, to make sure that we are fed and watered all the time.
Yes, I have one of those too. Thank you.
Exactly. It's all about those healthy relationships, right? Okay, so your biggest pet peeve, like what's the thing that drives you absolutely bonkers?
Repetitive sounds, taps dripping, like drilling, anything, hammering, anything repetitive over and over again. Oh, I can't stand it. It actually cracks my psyche.
And so watching Barney videos when Bella was little didn't drive you mad?
I have a 6-year-old and she has headphones. Because a shrill animated voices also drives me up the wall.
I'm with you in that movie, absolutely. Okay, so what obviously there are books on your nightstand, right? So what is the book that you're currently reading, and what's the one that you really want to get to next but may not have time to?
So I'm currently rereading Women Who Run with the Wolves.
Yes, love that one.
Amazing book. And I read it a few years ago, and rereading it is an entirely different experience now at the tender age of 45. But it's a fabulous book. And what I'm dying to get my hands on is Viola Davis's Autobiography. Can't wait. It's sold out everywhere, so I've got it on order.
I'm sure that's going to be quite something. I don't think I don't think, I think, is it not on Kindle in South Africa? Can't you get it as or are you a book girl?
I am a traditionalist. So pages that I can turn and spines that I
Yes,
can crack. Yes, that is
yes,
very satisfying to me.
yes, me too. I'm also a book girl. I think one of the toughest things to do in the last year, apart from um, changing continents, changing hemispheres, changing cultures, was having to let go of my library because
Oh,
we couldn't, So now the upside is that I've got a list of
you
what
gotta restock.
absolutely has to be restocked, right? It's like rediscovering all those. Oh yes, I need this. Yeah, okay, we need to do this.
Oh,
Doesn't matter if I haven't touched it in 20 years. It needs to be on
no,
the
it needs,
shelf. I,
absolutely.
totally, totally. Yeah,
I
yeah.
will help you shop for that if you like.
Thank you. Okay, so right, the books we've covered. Is there a quote that you live by? And I have a few which are different, applicable in different situations. Like my favorite one is "Don't work with assholes," right? So it's on the bottom of my signature, and I'm always a little bit. I do pause for thought when I send it to a new client, but then I'm thinking, but if they're an arsehole, I don't want to work with them anyway, so it's okay. And if they don't see the humor in that, well, then they're not my
Then
people.
you,
So it's kind of like a red velvet, like
yeah.
Michael Port talks about having the red velvet thing, like the red carpets. When you open
Yep.
somebody, I don't know, he has a particular way to describe it. That's kind of my red velvet thing. So if they're going to be offended by me saying I don't want to work with arseholes, then they're probably not going to want to work with me. So but what's yours? What's the
No,
thing
I
that
love that. Um, sorry, I want to put that as my signature now.
I'll send it to
But
you.
but with the population I work with, I think that might not be a good idea.
Yes, okay, it's
Um,
all about
there,
context, guys.
there's a Maya Angelou quote. Well, there's a Maya Angelou poem, and I have a verse of it tattooed on my back, and it is every stanza ends in "Still I rise."
Mm,
Still I
mm,
rise.
mm.
And the mantras that I work within my own life and within my practice, there is hope always, and speak your truth.
Mm.
And the quote that gets me through a lot of dark times and actually comes from Bill W., who was the co-founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, and it is: believe more deeply, hold your face up to the light, even though for a moment you cannot see.
That's beautiful. Sure. Oh my gosh. Okay. So I think that on that note, that's a perfect place to say thank you so much for your time. Where can we get hold of your books or your book? Well, I assume that more than one copy is available. So where do we
uh,
get hold of them?
it's on Amazon, and more in South Africa, it's on Loot and it's on Take a Lot, but it's available as a paperback and on Kindle on Amazon.
Cool. Okay. And
And
of
then
course,
sorry, yes, and then
no,
all the other books I've contributed to are in some way connected to them. So so to read more of my writing.
okay, so if you can send me a list of what other things that you've contributed to,
Oh,
we'll
fantastic.
post that. We'll post that in the comments below this
Fabulous.
video and get you some more eyes on the work that needs to be seen.
That would
And of
be
course,
amazing.
if exactly, and of course, if anybody wants to book you to come and speak, obviously you are available. Given your, that's actually probably a good question. How available are you to speak? I mean, you have this full-time practice. Is it how busy? How many months in advance should we try and book you?
Bronwyn, I will make the time if I am booked.
Excellent. That's a great answer. Desiree-Anne, thank you so much. This has been such a delight of a talk.
Thank you
You've
so
made
much.
my morning so much lighter. And I am so grateful for your time. Please go and fetch
Thank you
your
so much.
young lady and keep her
I will
safe,
do.
and keep the earphones on the baby.
Cool.
Thank you so much.
Thank
We'll
you for
speak
this
soon.
opportunity. I'm really, really excited to be working with you guys again.
It's a pleasure. Thanks so much.
Okay, thanks. Bye.
Bye.